Sure. Here we are on episode 100 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. Welcome to your weekly rendition of all things junk removal, waste industry, how to grow and scale your business so that you can ultimately live the junk removal dream and the life that you want. Normally, this is where I kick it over and say, hey, Casey, what are we talking about this week? However, Casey is celebrating another anniversary. It's his wedding anniversary today, and apparently that trumps, our 100th episode anniversary. So here we are. For the handful of people that say that I talk too much and I don't let Casey talk enough during the episodes. I guess you know what, I'm going to get my fill this week. So then next week, Casey can get a few words in. All right, I will do the introduction. And I actually know Dave, so real simple. This is Dave Molenda. He's a coach, speaker, writer, all the things. This year, we talked about it. This year, we are focusing on the entire person, the entire entrepreneur. We've graduated from tactical to strategic to now what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And so I'm excited to introduce my good friend Dave as a speaker and coach and all those things onto our podcast. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, my friend?
Good. What did I miss?
Nothing. I tell you what.
Okay.
It's interesting. Is like I'm honored to be your 100th episode. So that's great. Obviously, that your show does not trump the guy's marriage. So you just got to kind of call it. It is what it is, right?
I pick and choose my battles. This one I'm not winning, right? Like when we pull, Family Feud, we pulled 100 Americans, right? Yep. And I don't win this one, right? Like nope. I will. And I know his wife, she's awesome, Monica's a sweetheart. She's stuck her head on the podcast a few times, so she's good people. I support it. I can't be like, hey, no, this is bullshit. Anyhow, yep. All right. So let's talk about. So Dave, let's talk about a little bit about your journey. Our audience is primarily individuals in owner operators in home service based businesses, and like I said, as we get into, we started to jump the gun. I guess episode 104 would be technically like the end of season 2. However, we're just looking by the year. In 2024, we're now focusing more on the overall entrepreneur. You focus a lot on positive mindset. One of the things that we combat in our industry, and I even saw it today, like the pissing matches in the YouTube groups and the Facebook groups and the negativity and the scarcity mindset, all these things that ultimately don't serve entrepreneurs. They take up a lot of time. They end up being busy work. And that's basically what you're on a mission to combat.
Yeah. I tell you what, negative energy is just, unfortunately, it's a killer in business. And, we do a lot of work with business blind spots. And that's a big one for people that, I think the biggest blind spot is thinking others have them and we don't. That's like the biggest blind spot, right? But when it comes to yourself, like you talked about, Andy, the whole entire person, the cool part is we choose what we allow into our head. We choose what comes out of our mouth. So, we have a ton of control over that. I don't blame the government. I don't blame my competitor, the customer. Super easy though in today's world, right? To blame everybody and take no responsibility. But the reality is it's on us. So if I'm going to be sharing something, why not make it positive? Why not advance somebody else's life, move them forward, bless them, so to speak, let them have a better day than if I wasn't in their life. So when that happens for me, it's a success.
Yeah. My brother has a song. My brother's a artist, and he got a couple of albums out there. His name's Tyler J. Weins, or Tyler Happy Feet Weins, however you look him up. You can find him on Spotify and all the things. Anyways, he has a song called This Is Eden. And it's a song he wrote like 10 years ago. And he only told me this recently. He forgot to record it on his first album. So he only recently recorded it the last year or so. And he has a line and he was really struggling with the very end of the song. Anyways, at the end of the song goes something to the effect of, there's 10,000 doors that open up and only one door that opens in. Or opens out, rather. 10,000 doors that open out and one door that opens in. And I asked him what that meant to him. And he told me. And then I explained to him what I thought it meant and what it meant to me. And we had conflicting ideas. And yet he's like, actually, I like your idea as much as mine, right? Not more or less. And the whole idea there was there's 10,000 doors opening up, right? And I thought I also related it to, on average, humans will interact with 10,000 people in their lifetime, which isn't really that many, right? Or get to know 10,000 people by name, whatever.
Sure.
And you have the opportunity to put out whatever you want, and you have the opportunity to choose what comes in. That's a you choice. And so when I see people having negative bias, or like you talked about, right? Your competition, the government, the weather, all these things are uncontrollable. It's like, well, yeah, when you allow that in, you're allowing them to take control. I know me on a very practical level. I watched something earlier today, an article or a news clip. I specifically looked for it on Kevin O'Leary, and it was on CNN. Now I turn off CNN and Fox News full spectrum on my YouTube, and yet I watched that. And of course, then the next clip is something political, about Biden, and the next thing is about Trump. I wanted to watch what Kevin O'Leary had to say about the lawsuit, not CNN's take on Trump. And again, it sucks me right back into that. Like, I get sucked into political bullshit. I get fired up about it. I fight with people, and yet I have no control over it. So, what advice do you have? What perspective? What methodology? I guess is maybe the best question. What do you have for people like me who, I make choices, they're inconsistent with my overall goals, or entrepreneurs get caught up comparing themselves to others? What are some tips, tricks, methodologies so you can stay on a righteous path?
Well, I tell you, the first step in the 12-step program anywhere, right, is to acknowledge the fact that it's an issue, right?
Yeah.
And
Awareness
again,
is the first step, not the last step. Like,
exactly.
I have mastered that step, and sometimes I stay there. I live there.
Yeah, and most in that so realistically, Andy, you're probably farther than most, because a lot of people never get to that spot. Again, it's a blind spot. I don't have that problem. I'm fine. It's everyone else's issue. So once you identify what you're struggling with, then it's like, what do I want to do different? And like emotional intelligence, we do a ton of work with that, and they talk a lot about triggers. Okay, so what triggers you? So if CNN or Fox or whatever triggers you, I know for myself, there's certain stations I can't watch, because, to your point, I'll either so disagree with them, or it'll just be a rabbit hole that my life doesn't need at this particular moment. So I have to see what triggers me, and I have to be real about it. Again, a lot of these triggers are blind spots for people. What in the world triggers you? So find out what that is. Ask somebody that's close to you. Get somebody in your life that you trust, and they can say, hey, do you know that you do X, whatever X is? But I think that, trying to really be cognizant of those triggers are really, you knew them. You tried to find Kevin O'Leary, right? And all of a sudden, before you know it, everything else kind of is vying for your time and your attention. So were you successful with it today?
Yeah, I watched the clip.
Yep.
And as I'm getting towards the end of the clip, I look at the next recommended clip. So I was like, nope, gotta go. And I even shut down the YouTube app and restarted it, so it goes back to what I normally would watch.
Sure.
And the clip, I do a live show at 3:30, 15:30 every Monday, and the clip was relative to what I was talking about. And so that's why it was relevant. So I wanted to have the clip on the ready. So I saw it a week ago. Whatever, somebody else, how YouTube is. Where somebody else had reposted it. So I never watched the full thing. And I always want to watch the full clip so I get the context. So I'm not hearing a 1 minute bite of a 10-minute interview. So I wanted to watch, I listened to the full interview. So I understood contextually that I'm not just picking and choosing what I want. I watched the whole thing. And then I'm like, all right, after watching the 10 minutes, yep, I'm still consistent in my message. At least I've done all of 10 minutes of data research, which often people don't do. They'll take one sound bite and run with it instead of listening to the whole podcast, the whole interview. Because the complete body of work takes work versus getting the one soundbite that triggers you. Anybody can do that.
So definitely, I realize that it's an issue in your life, and then try to find what triggers it. And then again, there's times where, if you're struggling mentally, because I know for me, you hate to lose a deal. Let's say you lost a deal, or you lost something, and then all of a sudden you might feel a little more in kind of privilege, where I should get this. So
Yep.
screw that. I'm going to shut down. And if you're going to consciously shut down and do it, that's different because you consciously know you're doing it. It's different if, I don't know about you, but sometimes on LinkedIn, boy, I start and all of a sudden 30 minutes, I was just looking for one person's connection information. And 30 minutes later, I'm down so many rabbit holes. It's like, what in the world just happened,
So one thing here, Grant, one of our avid listeners, appreciate you, Grant. You know what? Casey knows how to pronounce his name. Taylor will hop on here in a second and give me the pronunciation. I hate slaughtering people's names because mine gets slaughtered. And it's super simple. Once he told us what it was, and I phonetically have struggled to remember it. So Grant, we'll say Grant for now. One of our avid, was that? Govro. There it is. It's Govro. Like it is.
Double G.
He uses, there you go, Govro. There we go. See, Grant's listening. Govro. That's it. He's got so many extra letters in there. Whatever. Thank you, Grant. So here's the deal, Grant. And actually, what you were saying was right in line with what Grant had said here. So you had said, a deal you should have got, right? And oftentimes it's hard to positive aspect. I just try to take things one at a time. Here's what, this is a very classic example. We all have this. I had this earlier today. I looked at a job last week. I know I bet it right. I knew it was a good, solid number. I knew where my number was. I also know where my pricing is. And then this morning I said, hey, what happened with that follow-up? And they're like, well, they found somebody else to do it. So my pricing was right around 4,000. They found somebody else to do it for 3,000. And we recently did a price increase. So I said, okay, under my old pricing, I'd have still been at 3,750. And I look at it. Okay, let's take a look at it. The homeowner that was there is not the person paying for it. So we didn't have that connection. We didn't get an opportunity to sell the value to the person paying for it. The person paying for it was only looking at the bottom dollar, right? It was transactional to them. It was not in one of our target zip codes. We've already determined that that's not our ideal customer, right? So as I start going down the list, it's like, well, no, you know what? It wasn't our deal when I walked in the door. It wasn't our deal when we walked out the door. And had I not changed pricing, I still would have been more than the next guy. And in this situation, they weren't our customer. They were looking for the lowest price. We aren't the lowest price. We're the highest quality. And I rather die on the highest quality than the lowest price. And so, yes, that initial knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, that sucks. And then I have to remind myself who we are, what our values are, and what matters to us. And ultimately, it wasn't the best fit for us. And so now I move on. In that same breath, I'm one phone call away from someone saying, yep, I value your time. I value the difference that you bring by recycling and keeping things out of the landfill. And because of that, I'm willing to pay more. I value your the efficiency you guys have. These are the things I value that I share. And then I find my customers. And it was interesting. We were talking about blind spots earlier. I recently found out a group of CEOs that I'm in a roundtable with, and I have been for the last 4 years. Half of them did not even know what I did with the stuff when I bring it back to my warehouse. Had no clue the amount of recycling we do, the amount of responsible disposal, all the things that we do that separate us from the competition. And I was pissed. I'm like, how do you guys not know? I come up here, I talk about my business, I put videos on LinkedIn, I put videos on YouTube and Facebook. I beat the drum, I go out and speak, right? I'm going through all this in my head. And then I have to say, well, hold on. We got to answer that question. How don't they know? It's like, well, maybe they don't watch my content. Maybe I wasn't emphatic. And one person said, well, I've never been to your building. Okay. Well, how do I get people to come in my building? And earlier that week, I had shot content that answered that question. But that blind spot, it's like, I just figured everybody knew. Everybody knows the things we do. And it's like, no, here are people that are close to me. And yet I haven't got through to them yet. Now, I can sit here. I think of Action Coach. Action Coach uses the OARBED methodology. So it's ownership, accountability, responsibility, or blame, excuse, denial. I can live down here and blame, excuse, denial. Oh, they should know. Well, I've done everything I can do to let them know. Or they know, they're just bullshit. No. I got to take ownership. Okay, what can I do? All right, well, I need to do more content. I need to do more tours. I need to speak on more stages. These are all the things I can do to solve my problem when I take ownership of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny. I don't know about you, but I've run into plenty of people that they're all hyped to get a job and then they lose it. And they're all like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't get that job. They suck. I mean, it's like this whole denial thing. It's like,
oh my God, that's funny. You're right. It's pure denial. It's like, Oh, they would have been a shitty customer. It's like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yesterday you were hyped on them.
Yep.
Like,
Exactly. Yep.
you know what?
Yesterday they were the best. Yep.
I know. Well, I tell this to our operations guy all the time because he'll get discouraged just as I will, as our estimator will. You know what? Not everybody's our customer. And sometimes we figure it out right away. When people call us thinking that we're the city of Milwaukee Department of Sanitation and Public Works, and we're like, no, we're a paid service, they hang up.
Sure.
Okay. They
Oh,
found
yeah.
out quickly they were not our customer. There's other
Right.
people where we call them, we qualify them, we quote them, they accept it, and we show up to their job the day of, and they're like, oh, we're not ready for you.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you weren't our customer. It took us a lot longer to figure that
Sure.
out, and yet the
Yeah.
fact remained the same. And when I look at it historically, year over year, our close rate is almost it's within 2 or 3 points every single year when we do our follow-ups, when we do our operations
Sure.
correctly. When we're
Yep.
not doing operations, our number drops. And when we do really, really good work on follow-up, it only goes up by a point or two. We're not talking 20, 30 point swings. Not everyone's our customer. Yes, we're going
Right.
to dial in our marketing and our messaging. Yes, we want the ideal customer to call us. And yet, not everybody's our customer. And getting
Yeah.
discouraged by it does you no good. Because when people think about you, when you go to the grocery store and you buy tricks instead of fruity pebbles or whatever, does anybody give a shit? No, it's an individual buying decision. Fruity Pebbles knows they're going to get theirs. That next
Yep.
customer is a Fruity Pebble guy and not a tricks guy or girl, right?
Well,
That's
but
the
that discouraged piece though, Andy, that
yeah,
really problem is that leads to more negative behavior.
100%.
Generally speaking, right? Oh man, I got to lower my price. I
Yeah,
have to badmouth my competition. I got to do something rather than take that high road of where you built your business. That discouragement, man. How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to make the payroll? Those things are all in our head as entrepreneurs. So that's a big temptation to just jump in and hey, the next job instead of $4,000 you're going to go to 3,100, right? To make
yep.
it up, and no one wins at that, and that's the problem is nobody wins when an entrepreneur is discouraged. So I totally get you.
So one of the things I talk about, and I'm guilty of this. I've been struggling with this lately, and I've been thankful to have my girlfriend and some other people get me back on the righteous path. It comes. I talk about this in my book. Spite is a hell of a drug, and success is much more sustainable. There are times I have done things out of spite because people told me I couldn't, or because right I was angry. And you know
Yeah.
what? It's all energy, right? It's a good temporary fix. Now, what do you use? Are you using that spite drug to go against what you're for or against the other person? Or are you using it as energy to propel the system you've already built? And now, for me, when I use that energy, that fuel to attack what I love and go after what I'm great at, then it's successful. And eventually, I don't need the spite because the success is much more sustainable. The success leads to consistency. It leads to discipline because I know what works. And when I start chasing that spite, when I start chasing that drug, that short-term dopamine,
Yeah.
it's like it might work a few times, it might work a dozen times, and eventually it will not work because it's not in your plan. It's not discipline. It's not part of the process that you've already proven works. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How do you recover or how do you coach people to recover when they start getting wayward? They know the right answer. They're aware of it, and yet they're human. What's the best solutions there?
Well, so if you're depending on what wayward means to you, if you're doing something in your business that isn't successful, again, let's talk about cutting price. If that's,
Yeah, that's a great
you
one.
know, if
That's
that's
always
what you,
that's always the simplest answer. Oh, it's got to be our price. We got to lower our price.
yeah,
Let's talk
absolutely.
about. I want to dive into that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that's your go-to move, I mean, then you're a Walmart, right? I mean, that's what Walmart does is they just shave the price until the value. We didn't do a good job in my mind. This is my sales training and my sales coaching jumping in. If we didn't do a good job explaining the value, the
Yep.
price isn't going to be there. Because if I have $100 Lamborghini for you, you're buying it, right? I mean, you think it's worth $100, but if it's a Pinto 1972 Pinto with a door missing in some parking lot somewhere, you don't want that for $100. So, I think that we go immediately to that's our first, hopefully it's not, but a lot of people, Andy, that's their first thing is to chop that price.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's just like you said, it doesn't end well.
Well, it's because value is an end state of an equation, which is product or service divided by price, right? It is what do you do perceived on how
Mhm.
much money it's going to cost,
Yep.
articulates the value. It's like, you'll have one person that complains about, McDonald's charging 15 extra cents a hamburger, and somebody else, and that same person can go buy a steak, right? And a $30 drink and not think
Yep.
twice about it. Right,
Right.
because the value of the McDonald's hamburger is insignificant. And now you go to a nice restaurant, it's like, oh, well, of course you spent $20 on a glass of wine, right? Because the ambiance and the date and the this, the that, right?
Right.
So it's that
Yep.
perceived value. You don't value the McDonald's, you don't value that cheeseburger. That's just it gets you through the next 3 hours of being hungry. While
Right.
who gives a shit if they charge you $20 a drink, and an additional service tax on top of it? You're willing to pay for it because you have the perceived value. So when it comes to who's your primary, when you go on and coach, who's your primary audience? Who are you primarily coaching out there or
Pretty
speaking
much
to?
entrepreneurs that are really
Yep.
good at what they do.
Okay.
They're great at their craft, but they struggle with business growth. They struggle with team growth. So I think there's three parts to every business. And I try to go to sixth grade education because that's about where I'm at. I think about there's the product or service that you have. That's one. Then
Yep.
there's the people that buy it is two, and the team that provides it is three. So I look at a company
Mm,
as three buckets. I personally focus on two: the customer's experience and the team that provides that customer experience. So an entrepreneur that's got a really great product, but he struggles or she struggles with how do I grow this thing? How do I add team? When do I add them? What does that look like? Those are generally really complicated in their mind. And it's just like Tiger Woods with his swing. He couldn't, for the life of him, without a coach, a swing coach, he could not have been as good as he
mm-hmm.
is. Right. So an outside influence can look at a business and go, hey, have you tried this? Or what do you think about that? Just like they do a Tiger swing. So I just love coming alongside somebody that's got a really dynamite idea, experience, service, whatever, and they're just struggling to push it to that next level, whatever that next level is, and everybody's is different.
I love that about you. Your three buckets are all people oriented, right? What problem do you
Yep,
solve? Who do you
yep,
solve it for? And who does the solving?
yep,
And
exactly.
I break down business in six buckets, and all the people are only in one bucket, and that's called resources that are human,
Sure,
because I don't even do human resources, and I put everybody in there. The vendors are in there, right? Because I'm a process. I'm like, right, I'm one of those with enough process, people don't matter,
yep,
right? And I say that kind of in jest because ultimately I need people to give me money, right? Like the process can be great, and if the people don't
sure,
know about it and the people don't need it, right? That I get that. Okay, so let's talk about this, right? We do junk removal, right? That is the majority of our listeners are somewhere in the junk removal space, whether they do
okay,
project based, they go into people's houses or businesses, they do curbside trash pickup, so they'll compete with the
sure,
waste management for curbside. They'll do roll offs, so they drop dumpsters in people's driveways, and then we have other guys that are more the landscaping world, arborists and things like that, and
sure.
also cleaners. I think about like the one level more deviation of junk removal. So you're looking for people that have a dynamite product or service, right? They don't have that. That's not the issue. It is the how do I obtain the best customers, and how do I hire, train, and retain the best
Yeah,
employees?
absolutely.
So home service businesses, where are they falling short?
Well, so again, if you are, everybody has a different reason. Like you mentioned before, Andy, everybody's success is different.
Yep.
So we have to really understand what success looks like because there might be somebody in pick a city and state, San Diego, California, that has a completely different idea of success than you. They
Mm-hmm.
may have as many people as you, they may have the same amount of sales, who knows, but they might not fully have the same path as you. So we have to start with what are you trying to accomplish? What does the end look like for you? Maybe it's work less, more life, balance, if that's the right word. Maybe it's grow your business to sell it. Maybe it's, you want to grow it to turn it over to your kids. Maybe you want to be the biggest and the best in your industry. Whatever it is, if we don't have that clarity, I think, Simon Sinek said, start with why, right?
Yep.
So if we don't have a
Yep.
why are we even here, right? So to me, that's where we start, is why are you doing this? And sometimes, I don't know about you, but it's hard for people to really wrap their brain around that. Stop long enough to say, why am I doing this? I was speaking with a guy, I was speaking at a conference somewhere, and a guy after said, we were talking about, why do you do this? And he said, I have one word, and it's my mortgage. And I'm like, what? I'm like, your whole life is wrapped up in your mortgage. I'm assuming he was jesting about it, but I bet you there was more truth to it than not, where, you know what, get really clear with your why so that you're able to really have a great path while you're doing this.
So, and I'm glad you brought it up. We have established that several times in this podcast for the last 2 years, 2+ years now. We've talked about that, right? When we start comparing ourselves to others, we start looking at what the others have. It's like that has nothing to do with your why. That has nothing to do with your reasoning. They have what they have because their why outworks their what is in front of them, their challenge of the day, if you will. And when people are not specific about their why, they will falter when conflict and controversy comes to them. When you
Yep.
are very clear to yourself and your team as to your why, you'll be able to move mountains, because all decisions go back to that why. So
Yeah.
what we see most often is people, the why they get into junk removal is because they want independence. They see that, right? Often people see a path to entrepreneurship and business ownership with very few barriers to entry. I mean, a truck and a strong back with a good work ethic, and you could be in this hustle, right? People will
Right.
say, "Well, how's that different than landscaping?" I was like, "You need a lawnmower." How is it different than cleaning gutters? You need a ladder,
A
right? I mean, the
ladder.
barrier, right? The barrier to entry on junk removal
Yeah.
it is. It ain't a restaurant. You don't have to buy an oven, right? There's nothing. You get in
Right.
day one, and that's where people falter. Often, what we've seen the last couple of years is people make good money when they first get started because their expenses are low. They have no concept of what it's going to cost once you start hiring employees, once you start paying taxes. And then that why of, well, I wanted to make money doing it, and then I stopped making as much money, then they get all
Yep.
jacked up.
Yep.
Or,
Well, but you brought up it's a comparison trap. Why in the
yep,
world are we comparing ourselves to somebody? How often does something positive come out of us comparing ourselves to others? Either we compare ourselves to somebody that's rich and famous and way out of, will never get there in a million years, or we compare it to a competitor that's almost out of business. Either we work ourselves to death or we take our foot off the gas because, hey, we're doing better than so and so.
yep.
Man, it's easy to look in the mirror and look at somebody else. It's really hard to study yourself, to look at yourself, and really take stock of what's in front of you. So I think you're 100% right that for anyone listening, try not to compare yourself to anybody other than maybe who you were last year, and hopefully
Hell,
or last
yesterday.
week,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
exactly.
right. I mean,
Yep.
yesterday, right? I mean, when I look at our growth, it's like I build the pro forma on a year-over-year basis, and where are we year over year, and how are we today versus yesterday? Um, Dave Portnoy, who does Barstool Sports, who does pizza reviews. There was a pizza he did in New York, really good pie, and then he goes down to their location in Florida. They had another location in Florida, and it went there and it was okay. So he went from like a 9.2 pizza to Florida with like a 7.4, and
Oh,
then he called out the owner in person at the Pizza Fest. And the owner, I
sure.
loved his response. He goes, "Man, we saw that review. I was pissed. I got on a plane. I flew down to Florida. I spent the next 6 weeks getting that place where it needs to be back." He goes, "We're only good as our last slice." And I
Yep.
go, that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame Dave like, "Oh, the wrong guy was on the cook."
Yep.
You came on the wrong day. He wasn't in denial. "Oh, you're full of shit, Dave." He said, "We're only as good as our last slice."
Yep.
And that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. You got to say, "Am I better today than I was yesterday?" And they have 365 days a year to get it right. And so long as you're better most days, you'll stay in business. There are days that I've come in here and I go, okay, today was not a good day. Today we did not outperform yesterday. And here's a beautiful thing. The bar is really low for tomorrow. Right? That's it. We got a low bar for tomorrow. So now we have to, right? Right. If we come in and we shit the bed on a Wednesday, right? Thursday, we got to beat Wednesday. That's it. Let's beat Wednesday. And if we're better than Tuesday, even better. Today, we got to beat Wednesday. Right. And then when you do that, more often than not, you're going to be better. And you're going to eventually, you peak, you fall. You peak, you fall. We had 1,000 reviews last week. On Sunday, we had 1,000 reviews with a perfect 5-star rating. And on Tuesday, we got a 1-star. We got a 1-star review. Now, there was a bunch of contributing factors to it. The guy that did the job called the gentleman. I think he since deleted the review. I think he was upset. It was like it was put down as a 1-star review. It was written out as about like a 3-star review, and most of what he said was factually incorrect. And we didn't argue. We're just like, hey, how do we, we didn't go on Google like, oh, you're full of shit, take this down, F you. No, let's talk it through, So it's like we were living high for about 24 hours on the 1,000 reviews with a perfect size 5-star rating. And then we get kicked in the shin with a 1-star review. And it's like, okay. And there was some onus, right? I'd say 75, 80% of what the guy was talking about, there was nothing, no facts behind it. And the other 20, 25%, hey, there's some onus there. There was things, there was opportunities missed. We'll say that. I was about to say there's things we should have done or could have. It's bullshit. There was missed opportunities. That's it. Like, were we perfect? No. Was there room to grow? Yes. Okay, let's talk about that growth. Let's not argue the facts of the case anymore.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's funny because you're talking about hero to zero, right? Every day you're at the end of the day, you're a hero. Next morning, you're at zero. I have to say that takes a special intuition. That takes a special courage that not all people have. And so some people listening might not really have that. And you just have to kind of either find a way to get it or own up to the fact that I don't know if I can handle that up and down. If you've had a salary your whole life, I know on my podcast, we talk a lot about the transition from corporate America into entrepreneur. And it's like, there are certain people that just, let's be real, Andy, they don't have that. And it's not good or bad, right or wrong. They're great at what they do. They just might not have that courage to go up and down. Like you said, at the end of the day, you're a hero. 8 o'clock the next morning, man, you're back to zero again.
We have our monthly, we do our weekly L10 meetings. We do EOS and we do our weekly meetings and we have our scorecard. And then we also do a monthly KPI meeting. And I remind the guys, Monday morning starts all over. So if on Friday, if on Friday we didn't have a great week, like last week, we didn't have a great week. Right. And I told my guys on Friday afternoon, I say, hey guys, we did not finish strong this week. We had a shit week when it came to top line revenue. Let's get back at it Monday. It does not matter what happened this week. This week is already over. We had this conversation at 4. It was like 4:30, 4:40 on Friday afternoon. Hey guys, we missed goal this week. We did not make goal, and we have the opportunity Monday morning to turn it around. And my ops guy, who's phenomenal, he was pounding the phones on Saturday. He did what he could on Saturday and going into Sunday, so that Monday we started off in a better position than we would have had he not done the work on Saturday. And that's the thing. That's the choice you can make. Because when you've made it or when you've failed, tomorrow's a new day. And you got to be great. And that's why it's like, even with me, I struggle to celebrate. That's one of my challenges, like a self-sabotage mode, is I expect myself to be phenomenal. And when I'm phenomenal, it's like that was the ante. That was it. We covered our bets. And when we fail, I beat myself up. So it's more a how do we celebrate the wins and know that the work is only started for today? It's like, we got her done. Now what's tomorrow look like?
Well, and it's odd because like we only celebrate birthdays once a year, right? So you got 364 days of no birthday celebration for one day of a birthday. So it's probably normal for you to spend a few minutes celebrating before you get back at it. So what we've done, at least in our house, is we've gone to birthday months. So, and you kind of like, that's your month, and
Yeah.
it's not like the end of the world. Tons of things great happen, but it's just kind of a different way. So rather than try to fit everything into 24 hours, I mean, like, your guy said that your podcast just hit 50,000 downloads, right? I mean, that's
See,
like,
you stole my thunder. I was about to announce it. I like it. No,
I'm
go.
sorry.
No,
Well, I was
no,
sorry,
Dave,
man.
announce it.
We got to get
Announce it.
these cue cards
You saw in the
right.
private chat
Don't give
there.
me
No,
the
please.
information then.
Yeah, I know.
It's
There's
like,
new shit came to light, man. No, it's awesome.
yeah,
No,
but I mean,
celebrate
that's
it.
so that's it right there. So, and I'm in the same spot that you're in. So you talk about that one-star rating. So I'm speaking down in Chicago, I think, and at the end, the place that I was speaking at, they had rate the speaker. So we get the reviews back, and all fives, and there was 1 4.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, so there again, there's a choice. Now I can focus on the 55 fives, or I can focus on the 1 4, right? Where do you think I focused? I sat and looked at that 4, and I'm like, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
And yet, so I had a choice, because they gave some constructive criticism on a PowerPoint suggestion, which I've integrated, and it made sense. But I think that's really an important aspect that we miss. If somebody shares with you something you are short at, you know what, have the courage to own up for it. And rather than, again, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you suck, I didn't want to be there anyway, I'm not coming back, all this negative, rather than thanking people for sharing their thoughts, because that's what you asked for. Don't ask. If you don't want to know, don't ask.
If you got right when you got all the answers, you don't need to ask questions. So one thing I'll push back. I'm gonna challenge you on this, Dave. Yeah. I wrote a book all about words.
Yeah.
One phrase you said that I despise: constructive criticism.
Sure.
It's a garbage phrase, because it's this weird oxymoron. Here's the deal: you asked for feedback, and you got feedback. That's it. It was only feedback. It wasn't because it wasn't constructive, or it's only constructive to the viewer, right? At the end of the day, they gave you feedback, because you know what?
Yep.
They might have said, "Hey, this slide was jacked up," and it's like, no, that's it. It was perfect. It's exactly you didn't understand it, or maybe like, oh yeah, that is jacked up. And when you start changing criticism or constructive, it's all feedback. Feedback is a neutral term. It's like, well, what feedback did you get? And now you can disagree with the 4 all you want. That's insignificant, right? Why they gave you the 4? Okay, now there's something there. Oh, it's the slide. Or hey, you stumbled. Or you know what? Someone might say, I gave you a 2 because the message didn't apply to me, because I thought you were going to talk about, entrepreneurship, and you talked about leadership, right? It's like, well, then, so the speech was great. The messaging or the marketing was shit, right? Or the person walked in the wrong room because it was 201 and they thought it was 102, right? Like it's feedback.
Exactly.
That's why I joked.
No, that's great information. Yeah, I never even thought of that until you
Feedback.
said that. I mean, feedback is a great word to cover up in your constructive criticism comment. So yeah, no, thank you I'm going to do my best to make that change. So
and
thank you.
You asked for feedback, and you got feedback.
Right.
So why do we need to label it?
Right.
Actually, so I recently found out that my parents now listen to my podcast, and my mom and dad are listening right now, and I know that because my mom commented on behalf of my dad. And one of the things so interesting, because he's
hi mom, hi dad.
Yeah. So one thing that came up this weekend, we had dinner with them. We took them out. My parents been working the last year on my house, remodeling my house, and so we're at the we can see the finish line. It's there. We're getting close. Anyways, we went out for dinner, and my girlfriend was there, and one of the things that got brought up was entrepreneurship, because she is the standard job person. She's got a job. All of her friends and family have jobs. They have jobs. That's what they have, right? They're job people. And I was raised with entrepreneurial people. So I was raised by my father, who has owned his business for 30 years. Both my parents' fathers, so both my grandfathers owned their businesses. One was a farmer, one was a dentist. And then of my great-grandfathers, 2 of the 4 for sure had their own businesses. One had a scrap operation and one had a farm. So entrepreneurship is what I do. Anyways, we were talking this weekend at dinner, and my dad brought up, he puts in doors for a living. He's 67 years old. He still puts in doors every day. And out of 5 days last week, 2 days, his doors got canceled. One, because the sill was wrong. or the jam was wrong. It's off by like 3/4 of
Yep.
an inch on a $8,000 door. We're not going to just cover this up with a little piece of
Nope.
wood. And the other one, it was like an
3/4,
$800
yep.
door, and I can't. Oh, there was a dent. There was a ding or a dent. Something wrong with it, right? So in his world, he had 2 full days of work canceled by no fault of his own, right? And now he went. We have a hobby farm in Mequon, and he was like, "Hey, the sun's shining. It's an opportunity for me to work on other projects." It's like
Yep.
you can sit there and dwell on, well, who screwed it up? How do we fix it? Or you just say, you know what, door's not right. I'm gonna bring it back. Yep. 2 hours of the day are gone, invested
Yep.
with 0 return on my investment, and now I move on. And now what
Yep.
am I going to do today with this weather? Hell, take the day off, work on another project. It's that mindset of entrepreneurship that I was raised on. And so when shit doesn't go the way I plan on it, it's not a question of right or wrong. I plan for things and then it doesn't go the way I plan on it. And then what do I do? How do I respond? That's a choice. And that's what ultimately makes a good entrepreneur. That, or not even
So
good.
you
That's
get
what makes a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, you get to decide on, do I want to dwell on the 2 hours that I didn't get work done or the 6 hours that I did get stuff done? I mean, think about it. Your dad could have called up the vendor. He could have bitched them out. I mean, he could have just, he could have just ruined his whole day, ruined other people's day as well, which again, sometimes we want to do that. I don't know why people are like that, but misery loves company, I guess. And it's like, if I'm having a bad day, dude, you're going to have a bad day along with me, even though you have nothing to do with it. So,
let's look at root cause, right? The door was manufactured incorrectly. Yelling, screaming, getting shitty, throwing a fit does not fix the door. The door is still wrong, right?
Nope. Yep. Absolutely.
And that's no different when people lose bids on jobs. It's like, you can get shitty about it. Is the customer going to change their behavior? Is that one customer going to hire you? No.
No.
Let's drive on.
Yep. Yeah. It's hard though. Let's be real, right? It's hard to drive on. I don't know about you, but it's hard to not go down that hole. It takes practice. It takes intentionality. It takes the ability to be like, no more. I'm not going down this road. And, never forget years ago when I owned my construction supply company. I was going to the NBA show in like early January on a weekend, and it was like, I don't know, 15 below zero in Milwaukee. And I'm driving on a Sunday morning, and I'm like, man, this is like the last thing I want to do right now. This just sucks, right? And then it was right there that I'm like, well, dude, why don't you change your attitude from I have to go to work to I get to go to work? And something just so slightly, it was a small course correction, but it made such a huge difference in that whole day, because we've all met people at Taco Bell or anywhere that are just, they hate their life and they want to make sure we hate ours too. And it's just like, man, I don't get it. But we have that ability at that point to say, I have to go to work, or I can say I get to go to work and watch the changes occur throughout the day.
It's interesting you bring it up. I'm actually bringing up my PowerPoint for my workshop I do, and this is a no shit. I talk about it regularly. That exact exact instance. And of course, now I can't figure out how to. Let me figure out how I can screen share it. No, it doesn't want to go there. Doesn't want to go there. I gotta move my screens around. This is why I have a producer. Normally Taylor does all this stuff. When I know I'm going to use something, then Taylor does it. Then Taylor does it ahead of time.
Sure.
We got it. I think I got her dialed in. Let's see. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Look at me. I'm killing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing. Now I gotta figure out which tab I want to. Oh, there it is. I'm sharing. I'm clicking. We're doing. Boom.
There it
Nailed
is.
it. There it is. I see. I talked myself through that. We almost filibustered. We almost right here. But here's the difference. This is exactly what you talked about, right? This is the difference, right? Neutral of something you need to do, right? I use for the neutral words. I use the need, right? So there's something you need to do. That's no shit, right? That is a neutral word. This needs to get done. You need to drive to the NBA. Because actually this year, NBA home show was the 12th of January through the 14th. That was that day we got like those 15, 17 inches dumped on. And here's the deal. We chose not to go on that Friday and ended up shutting it down that day because it wasn't safe. And then by that Sunday, to your point, it froze over. Like everything was,
Yep.
it was like -10 that morning. Anyways, so what you talked about is this, right? Neutral is you need, right?
Yep.
And you have two choices. Are you a victim of your circumstance? I have to go to this. Woe is
Yep.
me. Bullshit. Or are you a victor? Do you focus on, I have to go to the NBA show, or I get to go to the NBA show because I'm an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur is fucking awesome, right? That's
Right.
a complete
Yep.
mindset. So there you go.
Yep.
That's so there. This is why I love doing workshops and talking to other coaches. I talk about. Oh, here I moved on the next slide. Shit words that do not serve. I gotta figure out how to get this off the stage. That's the next slide. Shit words that do not serve. We can have a whole episode on my book sometime. I know
Absolutely.
I go over that on my show at 15:30. But this is why. When you surround yourself with growth-minded people, the ideas are really not that innovative. When I talk to people like you, it's like, oh yeah, we're already doing the thing, and there's feedback you can give me and feedback I can give you. It's like, this isn't a pissing match. We're not going to argue. We're going to
Yeah.
both learn because we have this growth mindset. When you have people that argue with you, it's because they're not in growth mindset. And when you're not in growth mindset, right, it's either growing or you're dying. Those are the only two options. You're going up or you're going down, because staying still, inflation is going to catch up with you. The depreciation of your body is going to catch up with you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Absolutely. No, I mean, the cool part is I go back to what we said before. This is on us. So
Yep.
I think it's empowering to think that it's not up to anybody else. It's up to me. So I get to decide what goes into my brain. I get to decide what goes out of my mouth. So hopefully you take that to heart today, because it's, it sure helps when you have a positive mindset. My company name is Positive Polarity. And I laugh and joke about it every time I get a chance. I say to people, would you call me if it was called Negative Polarity? I mean, most people are like, yeah, who wants to hang around negative people? Are negative people. Well, let them go in a room and be themselves. I have no interest in that at all.
No, that's, when you take the time to use your confident, creative, clear mind, you're going to choose positive. Why would you choose negative? Right? That's a genuine
Right.
question. It's
Yep.
and I'll raise my hand. I am guilty of this. When I have a fear-based mind, or a hate-based mind,
Yep.
a mind of scarcity, then I choose the negative. And we're, as humans, we're conditioned. Negative comparison is why we're white. That's how we're wired. That stops us from walking into lava pits, right? Because we're like, oh, that looks hot and probably dangerous. Let me stay
Yep.
out of that. And yet,
Yep.
in today's society, we don't have saber-toothed tigers waiting around every corner trying to kill us. And yet,
No.
we have to consciously choose to have a positive mindset. Look for the positive. And it takes training. It takes discipline. It takes consistency. I was struggling to find that word. It takes consistency to be positive like that. So what are some of the tips or tricks that you share with people so that they do have that they live on the polarity of positivity versus the negativity on the other end?
Well, I'll tell you what, you live 10 years, the research shows that you live longer if you're positive. It shows you make more money. It shows that you have a better overall lifestyle. So you start with that. And then I can't really look at somebody's life and start picking it apart, because generally, if somebody, if you and I were sitting at a bar and you said something and I'm like, dude, did you really, if I like took exception to something, generally speaking, they start to kind of justify themselves. He deserved it. You're way worse than me. There's all this stuff in our brain. So I'm not here to try to help people with their own life. I just try to say, hey, get real with yourself and see where's your negativity. And if you really have a blind spot, which a lot of people do, about negativity, this is where you get to ask your family, hey, my wife and I talk about this all the time because I struggle with being negative. And it's like, it's going to snow tomorrow, right? So, or whatever. And then I look at it and go, oh my gosh. And I go down this negative spot right away from snow. And so, that's why we have a house in San Diego and a house here, or a house in Milwaukee. So I can just bail when I don't want to have snow, but it becomes a negativity. And sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. So again, have somebody in your close circle to be able to respectfully ask you, hey, do you want to be being negative right now? And then you just have to find what's the positive thing, right? I mean, we talk about it all the time. If you win 3 out of 10 deals, your kill rate's 30%. Are you looking at the 30 that you won or the 70 that you lost? And that's where, again, it's crazy to me to think, Andy, how many times Major League Baseball players strike out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. But I would be like, if I struck out on TV, man, or I got screwed over on a bad pitch, whatever, man, I'd be breaking stuff. I watch these guys, they go back to the dugout, put their, their hard hat down, they put their, bat down, and they sit down. I'd be like, what the heck?
That's why
that's how we got to do it.
Oh no, that's why I struggled in sales, because I do not like hearing no. Yeah. Right? I struggle. Yeah. I mean, I think about that's a great analogy, right? Like in basketball, if you hit 2 out of 3 shots, right? If you're a lifetime 66% shooter, you go to the Hall of Fame. Baseball, if you're a lifetime 300 guy, Hall of Fame, right?
Absolutely.
I play volleyball, and I count. I play volleyball 2 nights a week still, and I'll count on an average or whatever. When you play a volleyball game, 3 matches to 25, right? There's 150 available points theoretically. Right? I count how many unforced errors did I have, right? If I missed 3 serves, right, that's 3 points I gave them. So out of 150 total points between the 2 teams, right, if they can win 3 games with 75 points, right, 25, 25, 25. How many unforced errors did I give them? How many times did I serve out of bounds? That's the first one. How many times I hit out of bounds or hit in the net? Because that's a very obvious, right? The set was there.
Right.
I didn't, as I'm a strong side hitter, right? And then it's how many passes did I not make? And when I start adding that up, then I can say, okay, how much should I contribute to the other team's winning? Not even us losing. I gave them points. Right. And again, and then I think, okay, I started the season this year, and I said, okay, my goal is to not miss serves. That's the goal. Right.
Sure.
So I gave myself a buffer of 1 missed serve a game, because sometimes I'll get on better teams, I'll get a little more aggressive on serving.
Sure.
And I choose, it's like, okay, would I rather put the ball in bounds, right, and win on the rally, or get aggressive on my serve? And then on better teams, it's like I use the mindset, oh, they were better than us. They were better than us. They more likely they're going to beat us. I'd rather go high risk and steal a few points. And then on the crummier teams, then that's my time to keep my serves in, right? And it's that mindset of, okay, what am I willing to risk? What am I willing to lose? If you look at some of the best hitters, home run hitters, they also have the most strikeouts, because they're, it's either it's out
one or the other.
It's out or it's up and out, right? That's it. And that was the risk. And their teams were like, we don't care if you bat 250, so long as the 250 that you hit goes somewhere.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
It's
if you're
what are you
throwing runs
willing to
on
risk?
those, you're in good shape.
Same with me. I know that on us, like in our business, our commercial close rate is lower than our residential close rate,
Sure.
historically speaking. Well, I can tell you the commercial jobs are a lot higher. So it's not like I'm not going to stop doing them. I know it's higher, it's a higher risk. I know that the more hours on a job, the higher likelihood that we're not going to close. And then we close some monster jobs without batting an eye. It's like, okay, well, the maths, right? The math works out because I'm looking at the entire forest. We can focus on the tree, or we can focus on the forest. And in entrepreneurship and in life, it's the forest that matters. That's what you build over time. When you start focus on the tree, when you focus on one branch or one leaf, you will go down this rabbit hole of bullshit that ultimately does not serve you. Understand where the leaf comes, understand the branch, understand the tree, and then tend to the whole forest.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes with people. It goes with customers. It goes across all spectrums of life.
Well, on our 200th episode of the Positive Polarity podcast, we had Monte Ball Jr. on as a guest who played for the Badgers and ended up playing for Denver Broncos.
Yep, I remember that.
He started his freshman year at UW-Madison as a no-name. He was 3rd string, and then his second year as a sophomore, he was 3rd string. And in one game against Iowa, he said both the 1st string and the 2nd string guys went down. And he went in and he never looked back, scored the most touchdowns ever. I mean, just had a great college career. If he wouldn't have been mentally ready for that or emotionally ready, he would have hurt himself as well. So he showed up every day. Today's the day that I might be getting that ball. And that's what I think is so powerful. And it's hard as entrepreneurs. Let's be real. We get busy, we get caught up in stuff. It's hard to always have that, heads up approach. And whether you do a group like you guys, accountability group, whether you have a coach, whether you have somebody in your life to help you raise your head at times, I think is just really valuable.
Well, that's what it comes down to. You get to choose every day how you show up to every situation. You get to choose what you put in your body, what you put in your brain, or the air you breathe. You get to make all these choices, right? And then when faced with controversy, how do you show up? And when you put in the work, when you've rehearsed, when you're mentally prepared, you're going to show up the way you want, not necessarily the way that you are. And your sports analogy is, I mean, there's 100 sports analogies that can be just as similar as that. I mean, Tom Brady went in for Drew Bledsoe and then went on to be the greatest quarterback of all time, right? Because Drew Bledsoe got knocked out on the sideline. That was it. He went in. The rest is history. And he walked in, the famous story of Tom Brady. And now when Tom Brady played, couldn't stand him. Tom Brady and Kobe are two guys that when they played, I couldn't stand them. Because sports, right? The term fan from, sports fan is fanatical, right? You're not logically thinking. Anyways, sure. Kobe and Tom Brady in post, career, utmost respect for him. Anyways, when Tom Brady got drafted, he went into Bill Belichick's office and said, I'm the best choice this organization's ever made. You drafted me as the best decision. And it's like he was a senior starter at Michigan, right? And yet he said, you drafted me as the best decision that the New England Patriots have ever made. And you know what? Yeah. He wasn't wrong. He was the only one. Here's the deal. Yeah. If he says that, Drew Bledsoe never gets hurt. Tom Brady never goes in. Tom Brady never becomes the starter.
Yep.
No one knows that story because people say a lot of things. And the fact that he had the gumption to say it, the balls to say it, and then he backed it up.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
but you know as well as I do, right? There's a fine line between ego and confidence there,
Absolutely. It's right. Yeah. Ego. Yeah. The difference between ego and confidence is how did it work out? Right.
Yeah.
Like when you're,
exactly.
I mean, because what's his face? Johnny Manziel said the same thing. I'm going to be the greatest thing that ever happened. And well, that didn't work out.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe that's, I love math. I'm a math guy, right? And that's it. I guess the difference between ego and confidence will be told over time. The other I said this the other day. I spoke at Carroll University. It's a small private college here in Waukesha County for our listeners nationwide. Anyways, I spoke at Carroll University. I came into a introduction to business class, mixed group of degrees, and I had a good buddy, my Dan Freshy, another Army vet, said, hey, come and speak to our class about entrepreneurship for an hour. Fine. And about 10, 15 minutes into the workshop speech, it's basically me on stage bullshitting for an hour, throwing out ideas. I came up with a new idea, not novel by any means, and yet I came out to a mathematical equation. I found out the secret sauce to entrepreneurship because everyone says, what is the secret sauce? What is the, right? And I figured it out. And it's nothing novel, and yet I just put it into a mathematical equation. Here it is. What is it you are willing to do for free that someone's willing to pay you for? When you can figure out that equation.
Sure.
Right. And now the solution is different for everybody. Like with you, for example, look at this. I am not paying you right now to be on this podcast. There are no money exchange.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Wait a minute.
True story. Yeah, I don't know. You're 59 minutes into the show.
I think I read something wrong.
Yeah. Terms and conditions apply here. Right. You're willing to come on here and share your ideas and expertise.
Absolutely.
Right. And some people are willing to pay you for it. That is the definition of entrepreneurship. My father, who was obviously a mentor in my life, he always talked about how he never, feels like he has to work a day in his life. And I do not like that adage, right? The whole, if you love what you do, you're not going to work a day in your life. No, work is a beautiful thing. It's my favorite 4-letter word, right? You have the freedom and ability to make the choices you make. My dad at 67 years old chooses to put doors in every day.
Sure.
And he gets to do that. And he didn't have to read my book or go through any other paces. He gets to do that, and he understood that early on because he would be willing to go to people's houses and support them and work on their houses and help them out. And they're willing to pay him because of his level of expertise. So that is for all you entrepreneurs out there, getting back to junk removal. When you're not willing to do it for free, and right, either A, that's a problem, right? That's the why. Like you talked about that guy you met at the seminar that says, I'm doing this to pay my mortgage. He clearly is not willing to do what he does for free.
Right.
When you're willing to do it for free and when someone's willing to pay you for it, that is the start of entrepreneurship. There are a million more steps, and yet that, I would argue, is the first step. And when people struggle or fail, it's because they don't solve that equation first.
Yep.
Anyways, all right. Yeah, announcement. Dave hit it already. Celebrate the victories. As of this morning, we hit 50,000 downloads in the podcast on episode 100 with listeners from 38 different countries. So that's exciting, right? That is something I want to celebrate. Thank you to all the listeners. Thank you for the people that come on live every week celebrating with us. Dave, I will ask you to stick around a little bit after the show here to get the upload speeds.
So I can cash my check?
Yeah, cash your check.
Where do I cash my check?
I will write you a check now. You know what? My one of my favorite lines is my mouth writes a lot of checks and my ass has to cash them. Right? Exactly. You know, so it's like no, and I'm looking for
especially being on episode 100, Andy.
Episode 100. Right? Positive Polarity, episode 100. This is
here.
Maybe Taylor in the post-production can get some fireworks or some shit raining down. You know, my co-host couldn't be bothered. He's out on his wedding anniversary. Fair. So hey, that's the way we drew it up today. All right, Dave. Absolutely. As we wrap up the episode, let's talk about what is your top takeaway from today's conversation. Something, if the listeners get one thing out of today, what is it?
Well, first I wanted to say thank you for your service. I always want to make sure and give kudos where it's due. So thank you for doing that. And I think I out of everything we talked about, I think I've been drawn to that comparison trap because it sucks me in once in a while, where I start looking around at what other people have or how other people are. If you're not a materialistic person, but maybe you envy their relationship that they have with their spouse or whatever, right? So I really want to just get back to where I want to look at myself, like you said, and just focus on hopefully I'm better than I was this time yesterday. So that's good stuff for me.
I like that. You know what? I heard years ago, and it's true here. Comparison kills. It gets you nowhere. Comparison kills. So yep, absolutely. Comparison kills. Top takeaway for me is when I spend time with people like you, growth-minded people, we're having a consulting conversation. We're not in a conversation where we're looking to convince the other person, right? And that's when you know you're in a growth-minded conversation. When you meet people that are resistant, when you meet people that are argue with you, right? I gave you feedback as to the word feedback versus, like, oh man, I like that. Let me write that down. Right? You brought up comparison, and I'm sitting here quietly like, oh yeah, I'm guilty of that shit. I didn't argue like, well, Dave, let me explain to you when it's okay, or let me tell you why that doesn't apply to me, right? You said the other thing you said from the top was, you'll think other people have blind spots, but you don't have any, and I am, right? Like I'm a blame, excuse, denial. We talked about action coach, just like fight, flight, or freeze. People have a predisposition to one. And when I spend enough time with people, I can call it out, and my predisposition is blame. I will blame everybody for my problems. I won't deny, it's a problem. I won't provide excuses because I think that's lazy and bullshit, right? It makes me look bad. I will be the first person to blame another person. And so that's something I need to be conscious of, right? Because growth-minded people do not do that. They don't blame. They take ownership, accountability, responsibility. Growth-minded people do not compare themselves to other people. I talk about in my book, admire, desire, require. Admire, when you start liking other things that other people have, that is a slippery slope. When you desire things that you want that other people have, slippery slope. When you start focusing on what do you need, what do you require, then you get the good stuff. Right? That's the good stuff in life. So Positive Polarity, where can people find you, Dave? What is the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, positivepolarity.com is where it all happens. So love to hang out there and do a ton on LinkedIn, like we said before. So out on LinkedIn as well. So just hang out where you hang out. Wherever Andy goes, that's where I want to go. So, I'll pick up whatever scraps he leaves behind. No pun intended. So,
hey, I'll take it. I will also say, I told this to Dave a couple weeks ago. I called him. We were talking about doing a project for him, and he got himself back on my radar. And I was like, "Oh, this is." And you were on my. I told you that you were on my list to have on the podcast this year.
Yeah.
And then you called me, and I was like, "That was super convenient."
Yeah.
I had this is where there's my caveat. This is where comparison works. I had email signature envy of Dave. Dave sent me an email, and I saw his email signature, and I was like, "Oh, that's good," because he has a link right to his speaker reel. Hire me to speak, and then click here. And I was like, "Oh, I figured out today from our producer Taylor, I don't have my speaker reel available on YouTube. It wasn't whatever, right? So I had speaker reel envy of Dave. I told him that, right? Because I showed some gratitude, very specific. Not like, Dave, I think you're great. No, Dave, you have a really good email signature, and I want some of that, right? And instead of sitting back, be like, no, I was like, how do I do that? And he gave me the website, or I got the website, and now I'm updating my email signature. Why? Because you have something that also applies to me, and it's tangible, and I'm not jealous of you. I'm like, no, how do I step up my game? When I surround myself with growth-minded people, my game naturally steps up. And that's my challenge to you this week, this audience. Negative comparison gets you nowhere.
Yep.
Get on the track of righteousness. Get on the track of growth-minded. When you surround yourself with growth-minded individuals, when you start reading and watching and seeing the success of others, you'll start to organically build success within your own life. So that's my challenge to you. Is in a world full of negativity, in a world full of uncontrollables, in a world that is overwhelming at times, what are the simple things you can do day in and day out to maintain a positive mindset, focusing on your strengths, not the weaknesses of yourself or others? I love to have you on the show. Reach out to myself, Taylor, or anybody else on the show if you want to be a guest on the podcast. Again, this year we want to focus on the complete and whole person. Whether it's you or somebody else that you know would be a great addition to the show, we'd love to have them on. So please reach out to myself or Taylor or Casey, for that matter, to get on the show. Dave, any last words before we wrap up the show?
Hey, if you want to stay positive, it's up to you, buddy.
I love it. Positivity is a choice. So is watching next week, where we will see you next week on the Trash Talk Business Podcast.
Thanks for listening. Tap subscribe or follow to get the latest episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and tell a friend to listen. To learn more, visit